2. We're going to start this week with just a brief reminder and just a couple of points I want to kind of bring up at this stage of the course. Then I'm going to talk about what is research, which is this week's topic, and then I'm going to go through what you need to do in week 2. So let's get started. Just very brief, been really enjoying reading the blog posts that have already been published, and I've been adding some thoughts of my own, and really pleased to see that a number of you have been also adding your own comments and giving each other feedback. Just to remind a few of you that please include Crit 101 as a category, a tag or a label on your blog post, depending on what platform you are using. And one or two of you have published your posts and you're using Tumblr, but you haven't installed the Discuss comment system yet. So please do that if you want to get feedback from myself and allow other people in your comment group to comment on your posts. So just a couple of reminders there, important things to help the commenting and make sure that I can syndicate your posts to the main Crit 101 blog. So let's talk about research and inquiry. This is hopefully going to be an exciting week. It's going to be a tough week, I think. There's going to be a lot of learning taking place, hopefully engaging you in types of research and methods that you might not have engaged in before. Embarking on research is kind of a two-stage process, really, in that you need to kind of really ask yourself a lot of questions. You need to enter into a process of inquiry initially before you can really embark on research itself. And usually, choosing to embark on a research process, most people will start with either a hypothesis or a question. What I'm going to do over the next couple of slides is relate these ideas to my own research that I'm conducting at the moment for my dissertation, which this course is a part of. So if I was to put forward a hypothesis, I might argue that virtual courses, such as this one, can support the development of independent learning beyond the real-time curriculum. That's a statement, it's a hypothesis, and I might go out then in the research process and try to prove that hypothesis. On the other hand, I might use a question, which is what I've actually done for my research, because I'm not 100% sure about this process, and so what I'm really trying to do is kind of investigate it and see what happens. So the current research, what I'm doing at the moment, is asking. So I believe there's a place for them, but I'm not absolutely 100% sure how far we can take this. And this being the second version of the course, you know, I've got questions that need to be answered, and certainly from the first version, there are some things that worked and some things that didn't. So, you know, this is something that is, at the moment, very much up in the air. So I've got questions and I'm trying to investigate those. One of the key things about entering into a process of inquiry is defining and refining your question. So the question that you see in front of you there on the slide is one that took me a while to get to. My question started very, very broadly, a much more wider, bigger question. And then over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, I spent a lot of time kind of narrowing that question down, really trying to kind of get to grips with what I really wanted to investigate to make the research more manageable. And one of the key things in that process was to define key terms, to make sure I was really clear on what I meant by certain things, like what is my definition of independent learning, how have I developed that sort of definition, and what do I mean by independent learning. What do I mean by a virtual course? So it's really important that when you are given a question or you develop a question that you want to research, that you're very clear on what you mean by the key terms. That can be really helpful then in starting to kind of set out the process of research itself, when you start to think about methods and sub-questions that you might want to ask. And my research project has a range of sub-questions. So, you know, I want to find out about skills and attributes in particular. In my research into independent learning, and something that's probably come across during week 1 is that I think independent learning is a combination of both skills and attributes. An attribute being motivation, a skill perhaps being your ability to analyze a text. And I think we have to try to develop those skills and also encourage certain attributes to become an effective independent learner. I'm also kind of investigating whether there's a relationship between results achieved on these courses and a participant's preferred model. So the group that did the first run of the course had a slightly different experience to the one that you're getting, and one of the things that I'll be doing is comparing those two versions of the course and comparing the feedback that I get from you and the feedback that I got from the participants in the first version, so I can see if there's a preferred model, a preferred way of running a course like this. So I've got a series of sub-questions that I'm going to go and investigate as I continue through the research. So that's what we mean by inquiry. We mean drilling down on a question, really getting to grips with what the question or the hypothesis is saying, making sure that you understand the terms of that inquiry, and breaking it up into a series of sub-questions or areas of investigation to make the research more manageable. What we then have to start to do then is to think about a research approach, and research is often split into two areas, quantitative research and qualitative research. Quantitative research tends to put an emphasis on numerical data, on collecting numbers, and it's sometimes described as a positivist approach. Positivists believe that quantitative research is very reliable, that because it's largely based on the nature of cause and effect, and that the data you're handling is numerical in the sense that it might be percentages, fractions, what some people refer to as hard data, it's seen to be a very reliable mode of research. However, a lot of research that's conducted today is qualitative, particularly in the social sciences, things like psychology, sociology, in areas like education. We tend to conduct research that is not just about hard numbers, but is also about people's feelings, their opinion on what they've done. And certainly the data that I'm collecting from you guys throughout the course is both qualitative and quantitative. You know, some of my quantitative data comes from the survey that you answered last week, but that also I'll be wanting feedback from you as the course goes along, both sometimes informally via Twitter, and then in the last week, when you do your final survey, there are some longer answer questions for you to really tell me what you think about the course. So I want to get into like what you think about it, and that's really important in research. I think that, you know, if you're going to get a more full, or what we sometimes refer to as holistic, understanding of a topic, you need to know what people think. You need to get their opinions on ideas, not just rely on numbers and data. The one thing about qualitative research that can be challenging for researchers is that when you're dealing with paragraphed answers or people's thoughts and ideas, it's very wordy, and what it relies on is a process known as coding, where you look for patterns and common phrases, related ideas, to try and just make that data more manageable. So quantitative research tends to be a little bit more easier to analyze and take care of once you've got to grips with the methods, whereas qualitative research can be a little bit unwieldy. But I think both are valid. They're both really important to doing effective research. And that brings me just to kind of this idea of like multiple different types of approaches and methods kind of combining and overlapping and forming together. So my project is very much a mixed methods approach to research, and that's quite common within certain fields, particularly education, that by using both hard data, that quantitative data, and by using the qualitative material, I can get a much better understanding of what's actually happened in a case study or a piece of action research. Once you've decided on your approach, whether that's quantitative, qualitative, or a mixed methods approach to doing things, then you've actually got to select the specific methods that you're going to use. And we tend to break methods themselves, tools, down into primary research or secondary research, and again, it's really important to have a combination of both to make your study have a real sense of validity and reliability. validity and reliability, by the way, are two things we'll be looking at next week. In primary research, you might consider doing things like surveys, interviews, experiments. This course is a form of primary research. It's a case study. So the course exists. There are a group of you that are taking the course, and I'm collecting your blog posts and the various Twitter discussions, and all that information is coming out. And it's happening in real time. So it's very much a primary document. Primary research is about actively going out and doing the research yourself, which is the key. Secondary research is second-hand. So somebody else has gone and done the research already, and you are then using their research or their information to back up and support what you are researching. That can come in a range of forms. It could be a report. It could be statistical data that's been published by a company or an organization. Web pages, articles, things that you read in books, they would be considered to be secondary, so we would need to analyze and interpret those. It could be historical information, it could be data about something that's happened in the past, and then you're drawing on that data and discussing it and using that. What we want to do is use a combination, and the reason we want to do that is because we want to aim to achieve something called triangulation. Triangulation in research is an effective way of making your research more valid and reliable, and it achieves both things. And there is a difference between validity and reliability that we'll explore next week. But we want to ensure that, one, we've chosen the right tools, and by using 3 different sources of data, 3 different tools for our research, we increase the validity of our research in the sense that we can ensure that that combination of tools will give us the data that we are trying to find. It can also help with our reliability in the sense that across those sources we can check and put a series of sort of checks and balances in to make sure that we are collecting data that is meaningful. In the case of my own research then, the 3 areas of data that I am collecting are as follows, which is documentary evidence, which comes from the Twitter discussions, the assignments that you're producing over the weeks, and your blog posts. I can analyze that information to judge things like engagement, the successfulness of your work and how well you're doing. I can judge how well you're making progress or how well you think you're making progress by looking at your blog posts. You've already completed one survey at the beginning of the course, and you'll be completing a survey at the end of the course, so I'll have some numerical, some quantitative data that I can analyze there, and I can make a sort of measurement across the 2 surveys to back up and support what I've seen within the documentary evidence. And then finally, I'll be asking some of you to be interviewed about your experiences in the course, to go like a little bit deeper, get a little bit more detailed information on your experiences and what you've thought about taking part in Crit 101. So across those 3 different sources of information, I should be able to sort of like paint a really clear picture of what the Crit 101 experience has been like, both in version 1 of the course and in version 2 of the course, and then I plan to compare that information. So this is what triangulation is. It's about bringing together 3 or more different sources of information, triangulating that, and coming to like a clear sense of, you know, your answer needs to be clear. What conclusions can you draw from each of those pieces of data? How do they match up? Do they match up? Is there any sense of correlation? Do they corroborate each other? And they might not. You might find that one source of data gives you very conflicting information. That's perfectly okay. One of the key things to remember in the research process is that you haven't always got to prove your hypothesis, that if you set out with a question, you've got to be prepared and open to potential different answers that you might get. So, you know, research, particularly at the university level, isn't necessarily about going out and coming out with a particular expected answer. It's about being able to kind of go out there and find something that is honest, something that is critical, something that is reliable and can be trusted. And by choosing different methods of research, you're increasing that reliability, that credibility of your research. So, what have you got to do this week? Your reading is varied, and it looks like there's a lot, but actually several of those documents, the pieces of information that come from the University of Surrey, they're quite short. You'll get through them really quickly. They're just a brief paragraph or a few bullet points. But I want you to kind of get into this idea of what research is. That it's a process that needs to be thought through, from questioning and inquiry, developing a kind of sense of what your research is going to be, selecting methods, quantitative or qualitative, primary, secondary, and then embarking on that research process. I've also put some interesting links in there about Google. I know that it's very common for students to look to Google first when doing some research. So there's a couple of articles in there about how to make the most of Google in doing your research, and also some things just to be aware of when you are using Google to make sure that you are looking in the right places. This week's project is going to be quite interesting. And it's collaborative, and that just brings me neatly to Twitter. Last week it was a little bit disappointing. Only about 3 of you were able to get involved in the discussion. I do hope that this week more people will be able to be there, because the discussion is quite important. And this week's topic is a little bit heavier than last week, so I think it would be really important for you to turn up and discuss the different concepts surrounding research to make sure you're clear on what you've got to do and how you're going to approach your project. It'll once again be from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and please remember to include the hashtag Crit101 in your tweets so they can be all collated together and they'll be archived on the blog. So, this week's project then is an assignment. In a group, you're going to complete a small research project answering the question, what is the best way to cook an egg? Seems a little bit silly, but I wanted to pick a task that was relatively subject-free, unless one of you or a couple of you out there are doing cooking as an A-level. This is something that can suit all of you. It's not related to any specific subject, so it's an open project. It's very ambiguous, so I've not defined this in any way. You're going to have to go away and kind of think about, what do we mean by best? Does that mean, for example, the tastiest? Does it mean the healthiest? These are questions that you're going to have to go away and ask in your group. Do we mean one particular sort of egg? Are we only talking about chickens' eggs, or are there different types of eggs? So the question is purposely ambiguous, and you need to go away with your group and discuss the question first and decide what is going to be the direction of your research. So you're going to enter into that process of inquiry before you conduct some research. I'll be setting you up with a Google document to do this project in. You'll have some space in the document to discuss, to plan, to ask questions, and then you'll have an area kind of set out for you to write your project up. Your written response should be no longer than 1,000 words, and it should include references, and please follow the Harvard reference system, which I provided a link to here and on the blog, so you can make sure that you're doing your referencing properly. It's a good thing to learn before you get to university. It's the most common and standard referencing system that you'll probably encounter as you go up through different levels of education. In writing up your research, I've put it into sections. So you're going to just give a bit of an introduction to how you decided on your actual focus. Then you would discuss the methods that you chose to use and why. Present your data, your findings, and then finally what your conclusions are at the end. So there's a clear structure to how I want you to write it up, and that will also be in the document for you to work from. As I've said, you'll be working as part of a group. once you've drilled down on that question, you've chosen your methods, you need to kind of like use the document regularly. And what I would say is that although you've got a bit of reading to do, it's really important, just learning this from the last version of the course, to get started on your project as soon as possible and to use each day just to do a little bit as you go along. Don't try and leave this till the last couple of days before it's due in on the Sunday. You won't get it done. What you might want to do is very early on decide on the focus of your question and then pick your methods, and maybe you want to split tasks up. Maybe one person is going to go away and create a survey and get that out there on Twitter. That was a very popular method the first time round. One of you might want to actually try cooking some eggs in different ways and video it or collect that data. Others of you might want to go away and do some reading, find some secondary information, maybe from cooking books or different sources on the web, to collect some secondary data. So I would recommend that as a group you get together as quickly as possible, discuss your project, and then set out specific roles for each other. It'll be the most effective way to do the project within the scope of time that you've got, which is a week. So you've only got your 6 and a bit days to kind of do this before you have to submit it and write your blog post for the week. So it's not a lot of time. Google Docs looks like this if you've never used it, and this is what your document will look like. So you can see that I've set an area out for you to write up your project. I've put some advice and guidance in red just to help you, and then there's a space at the bottom for discussion, for you to include questions and things like that. If you've never used Google Docs before, it's really easy to get started. You can comment on the side and add information. You can use it just like Word. It's just like a normal text editor, but you can all write at the same time, so you can work synchronously, all be online together and discuss things and add text and information, or you can work asynchronously, which is that one person could be working on it one day and then somebody can come the next day and add information to it. It does not rely on you all being online at the same time, and I know that some of you all want to do that, but it is an effective thing to do, to kind of get together and discuss, but you can work at different points and bring this together. Both approaches worked really well for different groups last time round. Once you've done that, on Sunday I want you to write a blog post as per usual, reflecting on the reading and the project itself. What did you learn about the research process this week? How has that developed? Do you think you were successful in completing the project? And please include a link to your group's published assignment. In Google Docs, there's an area under the File menu where you can publish the document. And I want you to do that and include that link in your post. And finally, were you an effective collaborator? So one of the other badges that you can work towards on the course is your collaboration badge, and you earn that from getting involved in the Twitter discussions and also taking part in these collaborative projects. Based on this first collaborative project, do you think you were effective as a member of your group? And you need to be honest with yourself. That's really important. And I've been really pleased. All the posts that I've read so far have had a good edge of honesty to them. It's good and important to look in at yourself and see how you're doing. And then finally, comment and feedback. It's been great this week, just kind of getting into people's posts and adding my own thoughts, but being able to read other people's comments and see how you're already starting to support each other. It's a really, really important part of the process. It's going to really help you push each other on over this next 5 weeks that we've got left. It does go quick, and it will get hard at points, that the reading, the workload, trying to get together and collaborate. So the commenting, is a really nice way of supporting each other, telling each other well done, but also bringing up points and things that could be improved, ideas that could be taken forward, to make yourself, even push yourself on even further. So please keep commenting, please keep giving each other feedback. Finally then, remember all the information for each week of the course can be found on the blog. I've syndicated pretty much everybody's blogs to the main one, so as you post things, they appear on the Crit 101 blog. So if you're subscribed to the blog, or if you're checking it regularly, you'll start to see people's posts appearing there. So it's a really easy place for you to go and read and see what other people are doing, and also to keep up to date with what's happening in the course. Remember, all tweets can be found using the hashtag Crit101, so please keep checking that and use it if you ask questions or you need advice and help. Please turn to your peers, first as a port of call. That's part of what the course is all about, is about this idea of pedagogy and working together and collaborating. But, if you really do get stuck and you need help from me, you know where I am. You can give me an email or just send me a tweet and I'll be happy to help you out in any way that I can. And so that's that. That's week 2. Research and inquiry. You know what your project is. I'll be emailing you all on Monday with links to your Google documents, so you'll find out who's in your group. And just good luck, and I'll be around during the week if you need me.